Okay, so welcome everyone to our weekly call. In fact, let me just share my slides as well. Yeah, that's better. So, as you can see, the theme this week is the DNS abuse, specifically the sort of detection, mitigation, and prevention. In terms of the agenda, that will be the main focus of the call. And then, as always, once we've done that, I'll talk about some recent developments from the news headlines, in case you've not had a chance to pick up on those, signpost a few forthcoming events and future call topics, and then, time permitting, open up for any other business, as always. And Peter Lowe, as you just heard, Peter is going to be sort of tackling the subject of DNS abuse in his capacity as the DNS Abuse Ambassador for FIRST. And I should say, when it says DNS Abuse Ambassador, I think brackets the prevention of is probably in there, because otherwise he's done a fantastic job of promoting DNS abuse, and I really don't think that's part of his brief. So I think it's the other side. As I said, this sort of prevention, sort of detection, mitigation of, rather than encouragement of, is the important thing. Now, as I said, so Peter's the DNS Abuse Ambassador for FIRST. Up until very recently, Peter was also a sort of principal technologist within DNS Filter, but as some of you will know, has recently moved on from DNS Filter, so is possibly a potential good hire for someone in the market of DNS or security expertise.
Thank you, Andrew.
So with that note, I will sort of hand over to Peter to do perhaps a brief introduction, and then sort of run through the sort of presentation. So Peter, over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. I recently parted ways with DNS Filter, and I was the principal security researcher there. If anybody knows about any technical leadership roles, let me know. But I am still the DNS Abuse Policy Ambassador for FIRST, and also the co-chair of the DNS Abuse SIG. We recently published a document which is a matrix of DNS abuse techniques, and I wanted to talk a bit about it today, which Andrew's very kindly invited me to speak about this. It's a pretty cool document. It's quite exciting. I mean, exciting for us, and I think very useful for other people. So quick introduction, if you're not familiar with FIRST or the SIG. FIRST is the Forum of Incident Responders and Security Teams. It's kind of a meta-cert, someone described it to me once, and it's a collection of security teams and incident responders and the different groups and people related to them as well. So it's got hundreds of teams and thousands of members, and it's a truly global organization. And the DNS abuse, so there's a number of special interest groups. I'll talk a bit more about the SIG in a minute. But the DNS abuse is basically a bunch of cybersecurity and DNS people from all over the industry. A couple of caveats before I go on to the document. We're still making a couple of minor tweaks to the presentation, so if it does change very slightly between, if you look at it now, look at it later, that'll be why. The SIG itself is on a bit of a break. So we're still accepting, the Slack channel is still active, and we're still accepting join requests, but we're not actually meeting at the moment until around April sometime. Before we start, so I want to talk about like some preamble and context about this document, and some background and stuff. But I wanted to give a quick preview of what this document looks like, what the meat of the document is. It's a matrix of DNS abuse techniques. I'll talk about that term matrix in a sec as well. But this is basically what it's a table or a set of tables. And it looks a bit like this. Down one side, we have the techniques themselves, and across the top, we have the stakeholders involved in it. So some background on this document. The SIG. The SIG was formed in 2019 after a BOF or a Birds of a Feather meeting after one of the first meetings. And yeah, it was kicked off by Carlos Alvarez and Marika Kale, I think I'm pronouncing it right, and chaired by Michael Housting and Jonathan Matkowski to begin with. We have representatives from all over the industry, from CERTs, threat intelligence providers, protected DNS services, law enforcement, device makers, ICANN, registries, registrars, pretty much every area of that might be affected or involved in DNS abuse. And it's quite representative. It's mostly people who are involved in operational roles or research roles rather than policymakers, because of the nature of FIRST itself. But it's a really good collection of people. And I think it's one of the reasons why this has turned out to be such an excellent document. What we were trying to achieve with this is to create a tool for incident responders and security teams to help them deal with incidents of DNS abuse, essentially. That's kind of the primary thing. It's also as a resource to inform DNS abuse policy. So again, to help the incident responders, but in a more roundabout way. We wanted to address the fact that the SIG itself is looking to create a sort of a common language around DNS abuse. And also something that's kind of become clear since we started is that there aren't any real complete taxonomies out there. And hopefully this will address that particular issue. And also, this is just bringing people together. So we have, like I mentioned, we have people from so many different areas of DNS and cybersecurity that getting a central place to talk and a central focal point to talk over is an important thing. So the main thing to talk about is the document itself. The format of the document is we have a general introduction, which kind of just talks about some of the stuff I've just mentioned, but also goes into a bit more detail about who it's for and what they can benefit from it. We have some definitions, so all the different terms that are used in the document, all the different types of DNS abuse, and the stakeholders and some other terms are described or linked to. So we use definitions from lots of different places, in particular ICANN and CAPEC and MITRE ATT&CK, and some various other places. So we try to draw from, we haven't tried to make up anything that, ourselves, unless it needed clarification. There's a bit of general advice there for people who are dealing with DNS abuse of some kinds, and how they can, work in the international conventions. And then we have the matrices that are the tables themselves. It's a set of different tables, which I'll show in a second. The matrices, they cover 21 different DNS abuse techniques, which I'm pretty sure is the single most comprehensive collection of DNS abuse techniques that I think exists on the internet at the moment. That's where a lot of the thought has gone into. And it covers 15 different stakeholders. We have, sorry, I'm just here. There are 3 different tables, one for detection, one for mitigation, and one for prevention. And those take up 9 pages in landscape. So that makes up the matrix itself. We also have 19 listed contributors. It makes up 315 table cells and took around 3 years worth of work. And it resulted in this 20-page document. So some stats there, which I particularly love myself. But yeah, it's a lot of work, is what I'm trying to say. It seems like it's a simple document to some people, but yeah, it took a while to get there. So the matrix is made up of three parts. We have the first table, which is for detection, where we are looking at stakeholders that can help with identifying potential problems and potential issues that might be coming up. So if so who can help you identify or detect DDoS attacks, those kind of things. During an attack, or an incident, we have a mitigation table, which is for if you're looking for assistance with containing an incident and restoring secure operations. And we have finally the prevention table, which is for afterwards, where it makes it less likely, incidents of this type will occur in the future, is what we wrote. So these are the three different areas that we're looking at, and they, I think, are there's a lot of overlap, but they are very separate. And the reasons why we have these such a detailed set of tables is because of the differences where somebody can't help you with detection, but they can help you prevent it happening in the future. One of the parts of this that took the longest is who are the different types of stakeholders, who is involved in DNS abuse incidents, and who can help. We went back and forward on this list like a lot. The list itself is registrars, registries, authoritative operators, domain name resellers, recursive operators, network operators, application service providers, hosting providers, threat intelligence providers, device OS and application software developers, domain registrants, end users, law enforcement and public safety authorities, CSERTs and ISACs, and incident responders, internal ones. So this is, sorry, I've got a, I'll come back to messages from the chat in a second. Sorry, Michael. This is something that we, like I say, we went back and forth on this a lot. And often it was the case where we didn't think that it was worth including a set of, well, a stakeholder or a group of stakeholders, because they couldn't really help in any of the particular areas that we're looking at, either detection, mitigation, or prevention, or prevention, mitigation, detection. I forget the order. But then somebody would join the SIG from a particular group, and they would say, "Oh no, we speak directly to the government." Angela McLaughlin joined us recently, and they speak directly to people who work in the government and can directly affect policy from the national certs there in Africa. So it's something that we hadn't considered, and I think actually is going to have to be taken into account in the next version. We did get to a point where we thought, okay, this is good enough for now. Let's not let perfection be the enemy of very good. And we haven't finished our work, but this is what we've come up with right now. A couple of notes on a couple here. So application service providers, this just to clarify, this means things like Google Docs, things. Getting some feedback. Thank you. And we've also included, you might see there, end users. And that might seem a bit strange because that's basically everybody on the internet. But there are situations in some particular kinds of DNS abuse where these deal with, you as an end user, you can help prevent it in the future or mitigate it or detect it. For example, resetting your local Wi-Fi router at home, something like that, or installing a different kind of Wi-Fi router. So there are certain cases that end users are able to affect the outcome or help. Going on to the techniques, I will just read through these quickly. I think your question, Michael, on chat was about whether these are of abuse of the DNS or via the DNS, and this is both. We have DGAs, domain generation algorithms, domain name compromise, lame delegations, DNS cache poisoning, DNS rebinding, DNS server compromise, stub resolver hijacking, local recursive resolver hijacking, on-path DNS attacks, DOS, denial of service against the DNS, DNS as a vector for denial of service, dynamic DNS resolution as an obfuscation technique, dynamic DNS resolution, fast flux, which is a specific type of obfuscation technique, infiltration and exfiltration via the DNS, malicious registration of effective second-level domains, creation of malicious subdomains under dynamic DNS providers, compromise of a non-DNS server to conduct abuse, spoofing or otherwise using unregistered domain names, spoofing of a registered domain, DNS tunneling, so tunneling another protocol over DNS, and DNS beacons, so for C2 communication. As I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, there's overlap between a lot of these. And the reason that they have been split into different categories is because the set of stakeholders that can deal with these is different for the different types listed here, which meant that it wasn't useful to have them grouped together. So the C2 communication is a good example. We have DNS beacons, but then we have DNS tunneling. So that's another kind of, like DNS beacons is kind of like a lightweight command and control communication method sometimes. And DNS tunneling is perhaps a more established connection between an infected machine and its C2 server. So some people might consider them the same, but we felt that there were, after much discussion, we felt that they were distinct enough, or had distinct enough sets of stakeholders to list them separately in this in these tables. A couple of other clarifications or some things that I thought we should just describe here. The DNS rebinding, which some people aren't familiar with this, is where websites redirect to local resources. We have the on-path DNS attack. Sometimes this is called the man-in-the-middle attack, but on-path is a bit more accurate, I think. Dynamic DNS resolution as an obfuscation technique is essentially command and control communication, but specifically a way of hiding it. Local recursive resolver hijacking is more to do with enterprise networks. Compromise of a non-DNS server to conduct abuse. This is basically any kind of hacks that involve the DNS to operate. So almost any kind of attack, but we consider it part of DNS abuse because it uses DNS abuse to be effective. And DNS beacons, as I mentioned, this is really kind of just a sort of a lightweight C2 attack. Just to clarify another thing, we have put this out for feedback from various different people, groups, and we're open to feedback in the future. But we are taking a bit of a break at the moment. But this was a list that this is what took a lot of the time. Is what do these techniques mean, and how do we word them, and should we include this, or we split them up into different techniques or sub-techniques? We looked at the different frameworks out there, like I said, like CAPEC and MITRE and other things, and other publications by different organizations, like the Top DNS Matrix, and the other definitions from people like ICANN and the DNS Abuse Institute and Center, and also all sorts of different sources. And we had representatives from a lot of these places in the SIG itself. So, you know, we were trying to be comprehensive, but without being preventing, you know, being too complex. Just to go and have another quick look at the matrix. So this is what it looks like. As I said before, this is along the top, the different kinds of stakeholders that we have, and on the left we have the different kinds of DNS abuse. It looks slightly different, by the way. It was recently had a refresh, so the ticks and the crosses looks a little bit different in the version that was initially published. It looks a bit nicer now. Thank you very much to Fernando de Paula from First, who helped with this. So this is just to give you an example. If you come along and want to be able to prevent incidents of lame delegations in the future, you can come to this document and look at registries can help you, but registrars can't. In fact, not many people can help you with lame delegations, but the registrants can handle. There's a lot of notes here, as you can see as well. This is one of the challenges that we had, was how do we encompass all the information that we want to provide without giving too much information and keeping it as a useful document. That's basically the meat of the document, although it is only 9 pages of the 20-page document itself. So a couple of footnotes, just to finish up. This did take a bit longer than expected. I'll be honest, it took longer than I expected. I joined, I think nearly 3 years ago, and it was an interesting experience because it seemed like a simple problem, and then the more we talked about it, the more we realized it was not. And then other people would join the SIG and have another point of view. So yeah, three plus years from start to now, the SIG becoming active at the very beginning of 2020. We've had multiple iterations. We did start off with a version of this, which was we split it into DNS abuse of the DNS and abuse via the DNS, but that made it more difficult to present the information and kind of collected it all together. But it does have the same vision and mostly the same documents, right? You know, roughly. I had to say a big thanks to the former chairs and to Carlos Alvarez. John Todd was also one of the chairs up until just the publication of this document. Unfortunately, had to step away. Could you, you know, he's got a lot going on at the moment. I think Quad 9 are pretty busy these days, unfortunately. Well, you know, some of the stuff that's unfortunate. But yes. So yeah, thanks a lot to everybody who's involved. There's so many people who've contributed to this, and big thanks to them. We had a lot of challenges in it. There were a lot of in each cell sometimes and maybes and qualifiers, and as you can see back here, there's a lot of text in brackets in notes. So domain name compromise registrars can help with the prevention of domain name compromise by measures to prevent the compromise of the registrant account. So these qualifiers are, we hope, are useful. But one of the challenges is, how do we include that information? Initially, so the document itself was created via a shared Google Sheet that we could all collaborate on, and we used the comment field there and the notes field there to add these sort of clarifications. But that's not useful when you want to just give it to other people. We want to be able to have a PDF that people can pass around or share on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever, email to each other. And wow, Google Sheet, yes. I was a bit surprised as well, but it actually turns out to be an excellent way of collaborating. The problem is when you get to having a finished product, it gets tricky there. So that was a big challenge. The list of stakeholders to include or exclude was, and the techniques themselves were the single largest subject of discussion. And you know, sometimes we would spend a whole meeting, you know, an hour talking about one particular type of stakeholder. Should it be on the list, and can they help with this, and is it different enough from another stakeholder, and that we're a technique, the technique's the same. And yeah, it was interesting. What terminology to use? You know, there's a lot of different definitions of DNS abuse itself out there, and all the different, do we say man in the middle or on-path attack? And on-path is, you know, after talking about it, is the more accurate and more useful term. Do we yeah, I can go on about this, but yes, the terminology was a challenge. Notes and clarifications, as I said, and yeah, one of the things was, what do we call it? Is it a table or a matrix or a report or you know, we've gone back and forward with this often, and you know, they say that there's only two hard problems in technology, which is what is it? Caching and naming things, and off by one errors. And yeah, I think that's very true. In the future, we do intend to have another version, and we want to incorporate feedback. I think this is a great start. This is a really useful thing. We've already had some people who say that they are going to be using it. That was someone from NS1 on LinkedIn commented that they're going to be using it there, which is fantastic feedback. And it's not even a month old. Maybe it isn't a month old, but not very old, not publicly yet. So we do want to incorporate the feedback that we're going to get, just for the nuances of the, you know, the things that haven't got quite right, despite all the people involved already. The UI UX needs a bit of work. It's a challenge presenting this. It's a dense document and a lot of information, and solve the unsolved challenges from that list that I just read out. Some other stuff that we'd like to do, which is relevant to this and for, you know, relevant to the SIG itself, is one thing is we'd like to find out what kind of DNS abuse people are experiencing, and where are the reports going. Two things that we'd like to try and find out more about. Now that we have this group of people together, it's a good opportunity for us to answer these questions, which I don't think I mean, there's been attempts at answering these questions, but I don't think there's been a collection of people who are collaborating in a truly multi-stakeholder environment like this. I mean, there are similar things, and I don't want to discount anybody else's efforts, because this is first attempt or first efforts, which is from the incident responders point of view. But yeah, let's see if we can have a crack at that, and how well can we do. Also on this list is a MISP taxonomy. So when I put this slide together, we had talked about creating a taxonomy or a galaxy for MISP, and I was Googling DNS abuse, and I found that somebody had done that already. I think this might be something I didn't know about, because I started the conversation about that while I was at DNS Filter, and they didn't shut down my email address. So there may have been a email thread there that continued that. But yes, that exists now, and it's fantastic to see that. It's really good. So if you use MISP, you can actually use this set of DNS abuse techniques directly there as one of the galaxies. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks for listening. You can contact me, peter.lowe@first.org. I'm also on Twitter and Mastodon. And there's a couple of URLs here. If you'd like to find out more, or have a look at it yourself, download it. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. So if anyone does have any questions, either sort of use the Google tool, sorry, the Zoom tool even, to raise your virtual hand, or pop something in the chat if that's easier, or failing that, unmute and start talking if nobody else is. And whilst you're thinking, I think you answered the first half of Michael's question in the chat. I'm not sure if you explicitly answered the second half, Peter, which was, do you include the attacks that are sort of spoofing DNS responses, the kind of thing that DNSSEC is designed to deal with?
Yes, we do. Let's see, spoofing or otherwise, spoofing of a registered domain, and spoofing or otherwise using unregistered domain names. So both of those, I think, are variations on that. Yeah. But yes, they're on the list. Terminology was indeed a challenge. Yeah, as I said, it's quite amazing how a bunch of geeks can stick with one topic for an hour, honestly. Thank you, James. Appreciate the kind words. Arno. Oh, sorry.
Yep. Arno, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just a quick one, Peter. First, thank you for this work. I was not aware at all, and I'm not surprised at all. It took you more than 3 years, and for to a certain degree, it's not particularly slow, I would say.
Okay.
What I think is, however, really frustrating is that every single type of people working on one aspect of security today will have the same problem. And the issue is that we are lacking an entire foundation for security these days. So I could not find any international consensus on security since X.800, to be honest, Peter. And that's from 1991.
Yeah,
there's
I
no,
mean, that's a big problem.
it is.
I don't know how to respond to that exactly.
No, it's not. I mean, it's just to say, if we are in this situation, it's not only this work, it's many works on security are in this situation. We have a complete cacophony on our foundation because for all sorts of bad reasons, to be honest with you, we are in this situation today. One issue is related to vendors, where I am, by the way, because we have not policed ourselves. So we end up with a Tower of Babel effect on security. So frankly speaking, I'm really amazed by the work that has been done here and the care that has been done to identify all of these techniques and to understand the stakeholders piece. I find it fascinating, to be honest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arno. Yeah, we've made a good effort, and like I say, I think it is the most comprehensive collection of DNS abuse techniques that exists at the moment that I've seen. And everybody, you're right, there's a lot of different people coming at this from different angles, and there are other collections out there that a couple of that I mentioned, and I think it's to do with what motivates different groups, and not just like ulterior motives or anything, but what can they effectively get done? What aspect of this problem space can they help with? And trying to solve all of these different things is impossible for any one group. So, it makes sense for people to narrow it down to what they can help with. So, for example, some people define it as just a malware, phishing, and spam as DNS abuse, which is fair if that's all that you can really can deal with, and that's a huge section of issues to attack. But like, there's a lot more going on, and DNS abuse, I think it does ultimately affect literally everybody on the internet. DNS abuse is used by everybody all the time, and abuse of the DNS and via the DNS is something that it hasn't really been looked at comprehensively before. And even though this is from the point of view of incident responders and security teams, we have a broad enough set of members that we're able to come up with a really good document which hopefully can be used by incident responders everywhere.
So just a reminder, if anyone else has any questions, but whilst you're thinking, Peter, is there any value in maybe putting this together, or just transposing this information into an informational RFC through the DNS Ops working group, for example? And I don't know the answer to that question. I just thought I'd just toss it out there as, would that be a useful thing to do to broaden the audience?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I would like to. That's the kind of thing that I think we should start thinking about as well now, is who else is this? So as a MISP taxonomy, it's the list of DNS abuse techniques can be extracted from this and used in other areas. And I think elements of this would be really useful to the wider DNS industry. So DNS Op and other working groups as well. I'm not very familiar with the RFC drafting process, so I think it's something that we would have to look into. But yeah, thank you. It's a great idea.
Just
Arno,
no, is that a new hand?
It is a new hand, but you stole my points, Andrew. I was exactly about to say the same. I think to Peter, I think it's not just that you would broaden these texts to a bigger community, but from my point of view, there is as I said, we are facing such a cacophony in security that any good piece of work that can stabilize language would be more than welcome. So turning this from a publicly available document into a proper normative document. I'm even not sure this is an informational document, Andrew. It is a normative document because you would really define some terminology here. So the point why I'm saying this, Peter, is that you refer to MISP taxonomies, but there are other taxonomies that are, fighting against each other without even realizing. Right? I could tell you there are, maybe it could be useful for the OCSF part and others. But the point is that the big issue that we have at the moment in security is the lack of professionals, right? And to compensate that lack of professional, we hope we can automate, which is extraordinarily difficult. And it is difficult because, as I said, we do not have even a foundation since 30 years on security itself. So imagine that if you transpose that into a normative text, that gives the chance to others to stabilize this into code. If you have this into code, you can have a chance to automate. If we call this exact abuse, like what you mentioned in the document, I mean, I could take any of them, like this is an unpassed DNS attack. Well, this is an unpassed DNS attack. That means everyone that needs to include this unpassed DNS attack into a bigger campaign knows that this element of the attack, everyone can agree this is what it is and not something else. Otherwise, the level of scope creeping, of false positives, of false negatives, imagine the level of noise we have just because the tools we are not even using the same terminology in the background. Over to you.
No, I completely agree. And it's one of the problems. So the SIG itself was put together because there was no common language. I wasn't at the BOF, but it was Carlos Alvarez, I think Michael Housting, Jonathan Markowski, Marika, Cohen, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly there. And it was, how do incident responders know who to speak to? And because of this kind of lack of coordination or collaboration, and that's what this is really trying to solve. Yeah.
The closing thought on that, then I had to bring in Benno. Given I can also spend a lot of time thinking about DNS abuse, someone like Paul Hoffman's springs to mind as a potential co-author. But as he's not on the call to disagree with that, just toss that out there as a thought. And he's well versed in writing or co-authoring RFCs. But sorry.
I should say that Carlos Alvarez is a director of oh god, I've forgotten his exact title, but he's at ICANN as well.
Yeah, he's in the office of the CTO as well, I think.
Yeah, he's
in the same basic area. Yeah, good point. Sorry, Benno, you had a question.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Peter. Very interesting, good document. My colleagues also read the document. Very good. So with respect to a DNSOP document, this is not typically work that is done within a DNSOP or in the ITF. I think first it's a great place indeed to publish this. Or so maybe it's good to present it at the ICANN, I guess. And I don't know how it will be picked up by the ICANN, will become an ICANN document or not. But DNS op is not specifically best practices on running systems. It's more on configuration of maybe protocol numbers, protocol configuration, etc. But so, for example, as an alternative example here, how in the RIPE working group, or sorry, in the RIPE, in the DNS working group, there's this task force on running resolvers, and I think that's perfect. That's more operational practices. Think, how do you think safe, privacy, etc. That's I think the RIPE venue is the appropriate venue, actually. So this is more the operations.
Okay.
So yeah,
Thanks.
before spending a lot of time, but by all means, Peter, contact Tim, myself, and Suzanne for a discussion. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm always the first person to say maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, it's not typical work that's going through the DNS working group.
Okay.
But
Cool.
by all
Thank you. That's
means,
good to know.
chat with us, and maybe we can pick up another good venue to get this this document exposed to the community. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Always good to have one of the co-chairs offer a view.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Arno.
Yeah, me again. Sorry for taking the floor. Yeah, Benoit, I can imagine the issue is an operational security issue. It's not a DNS specific issue. And the issue we have globally is that operational security is not covered by anybody, not covered really by ATF, even though there is OPSEC. It's not covered by, say, or the AETF principle of working on security is that everything should be encrypted, which is, so it's not, encryption does not equal security, I'm sorry. ISO has a very specific view on security. ETSI has more of a certain specific view on security as well. ITU has another view on security. So there is no good place for that. But if for sake of a better place, I think you've got the OPSEC group in the ATF where it's really an operational security issue, frankly speaking. And it really ought to be normative. That's my point. I mean, no question about getting it to other places because this is really good work, but we need this type of approach on a normative place. Otherwise, it goes to each group, RIPE, ICANN, whatever, but it's never recognized as a norm. So you can believe in de facto standards. I can see all the damage of de facto standard as well. Sometimes it's okay, but at the moment, cybersecurity is such a bad state that this would be really welcome at normative level. Thank you.
Thanks, Sonny.
I suppose one observation, and perhaps just to draw the conversation to a close. Warren Kamari is the area director for both DNS Ops and OPSEC working group. So perhaps the answer would be a conversation with Warren, who's always, I think, prepared to offer advice.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know Warren, so perhaps you could share contact list. Oh, I know.
Yeah, thank you. Now, yeah, I can certainly introduce you to Warren. It's fine.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And maybe, yeah, okay. Let's do the DNS chairs, DNS Ops chairs, and Warren introduction at once. So we have the group together with the suggestion of OPSEC. I'm fine. And should I put you in the CC or no?
Me?
Want to be involved?
If you wish, yeah, as well.
With the introductions, yeah, okay.
I will support, wherever it goes. I don't mind too much. If OPSEC, but
okay. I'll send well in 10 minutes an email to to the chairs and to Warren. Okay.
I put my mail address, Beno.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. That's helpful. Brilliant. Okay, well let's move on there. So thanks for sharing that, Peter. The sort of culmination of a lot of work from a lot of people. So good to see it out there, and let's see if we can help just amplify the impact in some way. Right. Okay. Let's move on. Just keeping an eye on the time. I don't know what's up there. Where are we? Okay, so that was the DNS abuse piece. So, I think that was extremely informative. So thanks again for that, Peter. Just quickly on the some of the news headlines. As always, I won't go through all of these. I just mentioned that there's a sort of bit more coverage of the sort of current litigation through the German court system involving Sony Music and Quad 9. So you'll see a link or a couple of links to that, both a write-up from Quad 9 as well as an article just giving a take on it as well, which was quite useful. Also, this is not a short read, I hasten to add, but Jeff Houston has put together quite a detailed essay, sort of pulling together his thoughts on sort of internet centrality, covering a range of sort of different drivers of centralization and his sort of views on those. As I say, not a quick read, probably a good half an hour or so to read through. But if you have some time, perhaps for those of us heading to Japan, perhaps download it and good read on the plane whilst you're heading over there. Something that's pretty thought-provoking. And then just one other one I'll mention, third one down. There's a few pieces that I read looking at the Ethereum name service, ENS, and compare it with the DNS. There's a service which currently lets you secure the same name on both, using the words of the article, one of the articles. So you've got a single name that works across both Web 2 and Web 3. So firmly positioning the DNS as old school Web 2 and ENS as the future with Web 3. I'm not sure I completely agree with that characterization, but hey ho. But again, interesting article that may be worth a look, particularly in the light of some of the sort of various iterations of the alt special domain name space document, which is sort of through, I think now gone through last call within the IETF. In terms of other things, as we mentioned last week, the IETF 116 final agenda, well, as final as it ever is out there, as is, unsurprisingly, the ICANN 76 agenda, given that that's running this week. So if you haven't seen that, there's a link to that on the side, as well as a few other things, including, since they happened to catch my eye when I was looking through some stuff, there's a couple of vacancies for DNS4 EU sort of focused roles within Whalebone on the DNS side, which just caught my eye, so I put them in there as well for good measure. As we discussed earlier, IETF 76 is in Cancun as we speak, so running through this week. And then before we know it, a couple of weeks' time, the IETF meeting starts in Yokohama. So that's all coming up quite soon. And then also that week, you'll see the 28th, Echo are kindly doing a readout from ICANN 76. So if you haven't got time to attend, then you'll get a readout from the Echo team on their call if you register for it. That's providing you're not in IETF 116, otherwise you'll have a challenge to do both, I suspect. Reminder also, since Benno mentioned RIPE, that we got the DNS focused hackathon in the sort of 2 days immediately before RIPE 86 in Rotterdam. So got that coming up in the latter part of May, and so on. Plenty of other stuff there, and I'm still waiting. The last one on the bottom of the list there, or towards the bottom, just to get confirmation of the details of the ICANN DNS Symposium and accompanying OARC 41 events in Vietnam in September. As soon as I got more details on those, I'll share those with you. If you're planning to go to RIPE 86 and wanted to give a presentation, you hopefully submitted your proposal by close of play yesterday, unless it's been extended. The deadline has now passed. So I suspect you probably missed the boat if you haven't already done so. And then finally, next week we'll do a preview of some of the more interesting sessions on the agenda for ITF 116. So as we always do the week before the ITF meeting. So I'll run through the agenda and highlight the things that caught my eye, and then hopefully others that have also looked at the agenda will highlight the things that I've maybe overlooked that ought to also be included on there. And you'll see we've got some various other things, but we won't have a call on Monday 27th, given the clash with the IETF meeting and the rather unhelpful time zone differences. I think I'll probably be fast asleep, as it will be just after midnight in Japan at that time. Okay, so that's it from me. So we have maybe, how we do for time, a couple of minutes, 3-4 minutes, if anyone has any other business or anything else that you maybe picked up on that you want to share or ask questions about, whichever. So just a chance for anyone to do that if you have got anything on your mind at the moment. Either just raise your hand, unmute, or put it in the chat if you do so. I'll give you a few seconds to see if anyone does. I'm not seeing anything at the moment. Doesn't look like there's anything in the chat. Can't see any hands raised. Does Peter have something? Yeah, Peter, go for it.
No, I just wanted to wave. That's all. Say bye. That's
all right.
We're coming up to the end of the meeting.
Fair enough.
Thanks for having me on, Andrew. It was good to be able to present this. It has been a combination of a lot of work from a lot of people, and I honestly can't thank everybody enough. And I'm privileged to be able to present this work. So it's great.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for the presentation, Peter. That does draw the call to a close. A reminder that if anyone has any interesting sort of principal DNS engineer or security consultant type roles, to get in touch with Peter.
Yeah, get in touch. I'm on LinkedIn. Thank you, Andrew.
You're most welcome. And other than that, thank you everyone for your time this week. Have a fantastic week, and we'll catch up to go through some of the highlights on the ITF agenda same time next week. So look forward to speaking to you all then, live from somewhere in Japan, hopefully. So catch up then, but have a great week in the meantime. Bye all.